Welcome back to the Gravel Loop podcast. I have the distinct privilege of being with me today on the show is Andrew Lesperance. He's one of Canada's preeminent pro cyclists. Andrew has a distinguished career as a mountain biker and a mountain bike XCO racer. To my count, at nine essentially championships across three disciplines of cycling. He is a privateer. He is sponsored by Maxxis, PearlIzumi, and 3T Bikes, and we'll hear a lot about the gear and his pro mindset about that as well. Andrew's been part of the Life Time Grand Prix series since 2022, which is North America's preeminent off-road series. And I'm so stoked, Andrew, you're here. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Andrew, where does the podcast find you today, this morning, and what do you have planned?
So my wife, Haley, and I, just drove out east over the last 2 days. I'm from Halifax, Nova Scotia, so I'm just out. I have a break in the racing calendar. So yeah, out here visiting friends, family, getting to train out here, ride out here, and summer on the East Coast is pretty special. So stoked to be out here.
That's awesome. That actually leads me to one of the questions we were kind of thinking about is as an East Coast cyclist with roots out east all the way in Nova Scotia, but also in parts of Quebec and presumably even Ontario, but mostly probably the Quebec area. What do you find that type of riding, that kind of course gives you as far as insight or advantages when it comes to the types of races you're engaged in, both at the Lifetime Grand Prix and beyond?
Yeah. I mean, there's no question that growing up on the East Coast kind of laid the foundation for my kind of technical skill on the mountain bike that's now transferred to the gravel bike. Uh, yeah, when I was growing up, the trails out here were kind of old school, slow tech, super challenging. We were riding obviously different bikes at the time, like a 26-inch hardtail, and yeah, so to flow through these trails, if you could even find that situation, it required just a lot of practice, technical skill, and that has kind of laid the foundation of my one of my strengths that I bring to the racing, throughout my career and today. And I think the other thing with just growing up on the East Coast is that in order for me to make my career work, it just required a lot of perhaps extra effort. A lot of the bigger racing within Canada is based in Quebec and Ontario, so extra travel to get there. Um, Maybe not the same established cycling or provincial cycling associations as some of the bigger provinces within Canada. And I definitely see that firsthand now since I'm living in Quebec. Like they do a really good job with programming and that sort of thing. So I definitely it took a little extra effort to make it where I got to, and I kind of leaned on the community a lot out here to make that happen. And I mean, I feel like everyone, yeah, there's plenty of people out here, friends, people in the cycling community, and obviously my family too, that just help lift me up and push me along in my cycling career. And so, yeah, I mean, it's fitting that I'm back out here right now to recording this and chatting about it because yeah, this place has obviously just laid a massive foundation for what I've been able to do, um, yeah, in my career.
That's awesome. Would you also comment on? I think we saw that this year the UCI qualifying series was at the OG Classic, where
Yep.
and there was another event out in BC. The cycling community, I agree, is just fantastic on the Quebec side. Do you think that those two, kind of the East and West, are the capitals right now as far as getting the community sort of stoked about mountain biking and gravel cycling, given what appears to be a fairly popular rise of off-road cycling in North America, which is unique to North America, and also we get, as we'll probably talk about, we getting the Europeans coming over to enjoy the courses here because they're really seeing how not only can they make some headwinds, I guess, different from the World Tour, but just the terrain is different.
Yeah.
It's a different type of race.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of great things happening within off-road cycling all across Canada. Um, Obviously, the scale of things in the bigger provinces, like with big city centers or close to big city centers like Vancouver or Quebec, Quebec City and Montreal. I mean, we have a local. So I live in, or my wife and I live in Waterloo, Quebec, pretty close to Bromont, which I'm sure you're familiar with. They've hosted World Cups in the past. Big, awesome, ski and cycling place to go riding. And I think you were actually just out in the townships riding,
That's
which is
right.
super cool. But yeah, our local gravel race, if you can even call it that now, Gravelooza. This year, I think they're year three, and they were up to 1,800 riders in the on the cycling side of things, and they run a like a trail run or a gravel run alongside that, and that's that's also not small. So yeah, the scale of things is just different in the bigger provinces, but the community is strong. I think, as you've probably experienced, the community is strong in lots of different pockets across the country, and it is cool when sometimes those communities come together at the bigger events, or groups travel to these bigger events. Um, I mean, even internationally, like last year at Gravelburn in South Africa at the stage race there, there was a community or there was a group from the Toronto area. I forget which club, but they were all kind of part of a coaching group, and they were all most of them
Cool.
were riding 3T bikes, and they had all like set the goal of going to gravel, like training for Gravelburn and going there and doing the thing, and that was super cool to have another group of Canadians down there. But yeah, I mean, uh, the community's strong, and it's really cool to be a part of.
Yeah, that's so cool hearing that from you as well. I think that in general, off-road cycling has just become so cool, and there's as we'll talk about, the gear has gotten so much better. Those that are experiencing what these bikes are able to do on the terrain is just fantastic, and hopefully it continues to grow and gets more exciting. Um, Returning, I guess, a little bit to what's on top of, well, you have some events probably planned next, and you were kind of mentioning that when we were chatting before. You're freshly off the heels of the infamous this year Mudbound,
Yeah.
absolutely catastrophic weather conditions. What I was gonna say is maybe take us. Take the audience through the journey of just the mental grit and kind of how you were feeling physiologically, and kind of how that race went, when the like from your end, when the men's pro field hit the first mud section, uh, kind of where your thoughts were, because prior to that it seemed like it was going actually okay, and then just the weather just got more and more
Yeah.
complicated.
Yeah, I mean, Unbound, Unbound's a tricky one because it's the course conditions can change very quickly with either drying or rain coming down. So it is, and it varies throughout the course. We travel on a mixture of roads, well-maintained gravel roads, and then what are called MMRs, which is minimum maintenance roads. And these have a lot of the I guess the natural soil on them, and the natural soil is a very thick mud that sticks to your tires and clogs up your bike in a way that you don't really understand until you experience it. Um, so yeah, the I mean the funny thing about Unbound this year was that the first mud section that was uh, kind of such a massive issue in 2023. the previous mud edition was no big deal, and people were kind of basing their kind of preparation or maybe some of their choices based on that. I remember being on the start line, and I was kind of sandwiched in between Keegan, and I was lined up beside Russell, and obviously those two are very good friends. And Keegan must have had someone, as many of the teams did, they just had someone drive out and check that first mud section at mile 12. And uh, yeah, maybe 30 seconds to go or a minute to go, maybe Keegan received word that they looked at it and it was dry. So Keegan turned around, said to Russell, just dry. And it was just kind of okay. I had, so, okay, maybe it'll be dry. And that section was dry. But then shortly after that, we kind of get through that section, then we take a left, and then we're on, I think it's called Towers Climb. You can see some radio towers or cell towers far in the distance on this kind of undulating climb. And that's kind of where things got messy, if you will. I was in a super good position through there. I knew that just being in a good position early on in the race was going to be super valuable if I was going to be in the race. Matt Beers was on the front at that point, and I was second wheel. And then whether I, uh, yeah, it's a combination of me maybe not hitting the right line, maybe not having the legs to kind of maintain my speed. Um, and maybe a little bit of lack of tire clearance on my bike, or maybe too big of tires. I clogged up pretty quick, and then it was just a battle.
Yeah.
um, yeah, so I was off my bike for a little bit. I was in the grass running, carrying my bike. Um, Relative to others, I would say I had a pretty smooth run through this section. It was obviously there was people that didn't have to get off their bikes through like the skill of riding the section quickly, or maybe their setups. Maybe they had a little more tire clearance. It's a mixed bag. Like there's a bit of luck involved, but there's also a lot of preparation. So the people that got through there, yeah, it's obviously not just all luck. They applied their skill and experience to it and did a good job. I think I could have done a better job. Um, and then I guess the cost of that was a hard chase for the next 45, 50K. Uh, it took that long to make it back to the front group, and it was not easy. So yeah, the first we I didn't make contact with the front group again until after the feed zone at Madison, which is probably, yeah, 2.5, 3 hours into the race, or maybe less. Uh, and then as soon as I got there, I think followed an attack, and my legs immediately told me, okay, this is going to be a different day than you thought it was going to be. And it was a little bit into damage control mode that, yeah, I mean, I've reflected a lot on this, but basically I didn't nail the transition from the Traca, which happened a month earlier. I didn't, yeah, I could have done a better job with recovery from that, then training load between it, and then recovery before. It's a very delicate balance. And I had a really good ride at the Traca, which, from experience, you learn that, okay, when you have a good ride at one of these races, it takes even longer to recover. The, uh, it's not the opposite, and it's really easy to get lured into the idea that, oh, I'm on good form. Maybe I need to get back at it. I need to start training. I can, get ready for Unbound. But in hindsight, yeah, lessons learned, as is the case. You're kind of always learning, but yeah. So that is all to say that I don't think I was at my physical best. for Unbound. Uh, but as I've experienced this year, I think my floor has come up a lot this year, and um, yeah, I kind of just accepted the fact that this is going to be a hard day. I'm not at my best, but uh, it's hard for everybody, and you just need to keep going, keep moving. And yeah, by the last aid station, I was still in a group that went on to finish 12th. I think so. I was in a group with Alexi, and I think he finished just outside the top 10, but second in the Grand Prix. So like these sorts of that stuff was close, but alas, I didn't. I got kind of dropped with 50K to go. Um, I hit a wall, and yeah, it was a hard, lonely chase back or ride back to the finish, and mostly headwind. Um, and yeah, I did finally finish, and really proud to finish that race because it was a journey.
Yeah, you did amazing. I mean, you had your strong engine and your grit, but you guys were going against like terrible weather. If I'm not mistaken, I think the weather continued to deteriorate as you guys proceeded with sections of full on rain
Yeah,
as well. If I'm not mistaken,
yeah,
with the
rain and
headwind.
ra I think the biggest factors were, for me anyways, was the mud that was covering your whole body and eyes in the group, and my eyes got destroyed. Um, yeah, riding in the wheels, you're getting wheel spray that covers your eyewear, so you're kind of operating with really like a really small percentage of the vision that you're used to operating with. I've
Wow.
kind of reviewing that. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's probably between 10 and 25% of your normal sort of clarity of vision and field of view once you once you have your eyewear covered in mud. And then, you take your eyewear off, but then all that spray is going into your eyes, and that becomes extremely painful. So that was just a massive stressor on the day. Um, I should have been more prepared with multiple pairs of eyewear, and then just refusing to take them off, no matter how bad the vision quality was. And I think, just to like paint a picture for the listeners, you're operating with this level of vision while you're still trying to ride your bike in a group on the limit at 35, 40K an hour in the wheels. Yeah, so that was like a massive challenge. And then that, along with the wind,
Yeah.
really big crosswind situation for kind of like the Cassaday all the way to the last aid station. So it would be either head cross, tail cross, with super high speeds. And then the calculus there is, okay, the road's soft. There's two kind of pretty well worn in lines, but the good spot to be within the wheels for a draft, you might actually be in the worst spot for in terms of like surface for riding on. So you're kind of trying to figure out, okay, where do I put myself so that I can stay within this group, and then add in the wheel spray coming off the wheel in front of you. So hey, maybe you don't want to be right behind it. So it's just a challenge, it's a grind the whole time. And ultimately, I cracked. And honestly, I think most of it was just due to mental fatigue, of the additional stressors uh, that um, that were or that I experienced out there. and I've kind of come to learn throughout doing all this racing is that my a big factor for, performance in a race is just mental freshness going in, and which is a real challenge. One on the back of another 300K race, 4 weeks earlier, and
Exactly.
then also just the demands of um, Unbound week from an athlete, and you almost it's like a double-edged sword. You appreciate that your partners value what you're doing enough to, try to amplify what you're doing. They want time for media, all these things. But there's no question that, yeah, the week of Unbound in terms of like load on the athlete is very high. And what we're asked to do is do all that and perform on the day, at the end of all that. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's a challenging thing. But that's the job, and I'm fairly happy with how I did, but obviously lots of uh, I think there's things I could have done better. Yeah,
Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously, I'm going to say, I think you did great given all the, you look at the whole field and how everybody was affected on that day in general. And we'll talk about it maybe later, but, does the amount of support also matters. But I think, just putting on just briefly my medical hat, like you guys did all have to go both the women's and men's pro fields physiologically. That was pretty crazy. And I can't even imagine there was enough foresight to have had like eye wash stations at each of the feed zones, things like that. Like just the physicality of temperature fluctuations. You're drenched and basically you're completely wet. There were sections, as you know, obviously uh, living through it. Not only you're covered in mud, but that grit could be very irritating to the eye. In addition to
yes,
that, there's just grit everywhere, including in the gear.
yeah,
Do you think putting on your engineering hat, you are an engineer also in addition to a pro cyclist, which is quite amazing. You share that actually with a different type of engineering, but you share a bit of engineering background with Cam. Funny enough,
yeah,
it might be a theme. A lot of engineers in pro gravel
for
racing.
sure.
You had you had an interesting idea, kind of forecasting this could happen. Maybe tell us about what some of the engineering that you thought about as far as how to get through this from a mechanical perspective.
Yeah,
And I'm just curious if you think there is ultimately some sort of solution for eyewear, potentially
yeah,
to slough off mud a bit better. And this could be actually another engineering hack that could be deployed for this particularly interesting race.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, we can jump back to after I answer that question. Maybe we can jump back to the physiological thing because there's a lot going on, and I'd be interested to hear your background or like your expertise on it. But um, yeah, so. Basically, for Unbound this year, I worked with a new partner, Faction Bike Studio, which is a bike design and engineering consultancy based in Granby, Quebec, that kind of does work globally. Uh, so it's a really cool partnership because it kind of scratches my engineering itch and lets me use my brain in a slightly different way than I do for cycling. And this yeah, Faction Bike Studio is 20 minutes from my house, so I can go work with these people, with all the crew there face to face, and it's just kind of awesome. But yeah, we came last year at Unbound. I was, yeah, prepping for the race and just trying to think about, okay, what are the things that matter for performance? And I think um, one of the things I came up with was just drivetrain efficiency. So I pieced together a super basic arts and crafts project that had me basically attaching a syringe full of lube to the back of my seat tube that was accessible by my hand, on the bike rolling. And basically, I was able to re-lube my chain on the fly throughout the whole race last year. So basically, working with Faction Bike Studio this year, we just refined that solution and we made it an electronic system. So I had a button on the handlebar, and the whole system hidden within the seat post in the seat tube with a little tube running out to a sort of quasi um, like lube holder versus combined with chain guide that kind of at the press of the button drop lube onto the chain whenever I wanted. So I use that throughout the race just to keep my drivetrain running efficiently. And I would use it strategically um, when it made sense. So basically, in the middle of a mud section, doesn't necessarily make sense to relube your chain. But let's say end of a mud section, you go through a puddle that helps clean your bike, maybe clean your drivetrain a little bit, and then you're on an open, dry road, which does exist. Like it wasn't all mud. There's lots of well-maintained gravel roads within the Unbound course where it was dry basically. So I would relube there. And I did this throughout the race 10 to 15 times.
Wow.
So I was relubing my chain 10 to 15 times. And obviously I started with the best, toughest chain that I could with wax coating to kind of keep that wax on there longer. And wax is great. For dry conditions, it's the way to go, and it generally lasts a whole race in those conditions. But when you're throwing the conditions that we experienced at Unbound this year to things, it just doesn't work. Eventually, it
Yeah.
gets worn off, and relubing is the next best option. So that's what I did, and there was we released it or we shared it with everyone 3, 4 days before the race. So
Oh, cool.
in hindsight, I should have done it closer to the front of the race because there was several copycat systems out there of people just piecing, yeah, doing basically what I did the previous year um,
Right. Like
with what
Matt
they
had
could
a
do.
system.
Exactly. Matt had a
Yeah.
system. I think
Yeah.
Cecily also had a system. Which is really cool to see. And I mean, that is one fun thing about this gravel space is that um, it is it's a little less established than maybe the other disciplines, and there's a lot of tinkering that can be done and thinking and problem solving. And yeah, I think that was a super fun project, and it worked really well, and Faction executed it extremely well. The team there is incredible. They worked super fast. Basically, had a couple meetings, a couple of kind of ideation sessions, and then they came up with this amazing solution.
That's amazing. Two follow-up questions briefly. One is the other colleagues and friends in the other teams and privateers ask you now if they can get their hands on the same faction device,
Uh,
and by and is this going to go public at some point?
I'm not sure where it will land in terms of a consumer product. It is very niche, I would say. Um, it's basically for someone that like in our racing, we don't have time to stop.
Yeah.
Perhaps perhaps for an amateur out there just trying to finish, relubing at every aid station they stop at is it's not a big deal. However, relubing 10 to 15 times like I was able to do, that would kind of start to get annoying. So maybe there is sort of a little bit of a market for it. I'm sure the specialized off-road team already has specialized engineers trying to refine it for next year. And my wife was definitely disappointed she couldn't get a prototype for her bike, but we'll work on that.
That's right. That's right. There might be a bit of an interesting connection there. Um, I was gonna say you talked a little bit about the mental aspect of just like I'm just curious, like, is it, as you think about maybe let's focus on the next thing. You were talking about what's your kind of your next race, and in the Lifetime Grand Prix, I think the next one is Leadville. Is that right?
Yes.
And so very different, obviously, from Unbound, but kind of where is your kind of approach to that and what's next and
Mm.
kind of mindset coming on the heels of Unbound?
Yeah, so it's definitely after Unbound, we had two more races. So that was a pretty hefty 3 week block. I had a local gravel race, which racing 1 week after Unbound is always a massive risk and challenge. But I couldn't miss my local gravel race, and then after that, we had our Canadian Gravel Nationals, which I'm sure all the listeners have heard about, which went well,
Yep.
for me, but
Yeah, it did amazing.
no real results to no official results. But yeah, basically I'm in a kind of a rebuild, reset phase now. It's been really valuable to have some time at home, just get back into a training routine. Um, and then the next race is the Rift in Iceland, um, and then Downeyville, which is kind of a 2 day mountain bike race in California, and then Leadville. So it's a pretty. I do feel like the lineup of races coming up, they play into one another and they work really well together. And I'm excited just for the preparation there. I feel like I unlocked a new level at Leadville last year. I finished sixth with a new best time for me, and I think I was fifth in the Grand Prix. So it was a very solid day out, and I'm just kind of refining my preparation for Leadville for this year based on what I learned last year.
That's awesome. Yeah, and without giving away any trade secrets, I guess people do spend some time at altitude at some point. Because
Yeah,
just for the listeners, it's around 10,000 feet, right? Kind of.
yeah. The base level for like the town of Leadville where we start is 10,000 feet, just over 3,000 meters. And then the top of the course is at 3,800
Wow.
meters. So we kind of race between those altitudes for 6 hours and change for that race.
They're very different, actually. Just thinking about it, I mean, it's very much a mountain bike race, and I think drop bars are not like they're discouraged and like banned for this year, and
Yeah,
so it's going to be fully
yeah,
mountain bike. And just for the audience, even the first, and that's kind of interesting for me. You actually won the mountain bike race at Sea Otter, which is I think that was right after the day of Sea Otter, and
yeah,
I wonder if Lifetime will consider making that also an official one, just because there is more mountain bike kind of within the Lifetime. There's the Leadville and Schwamigan is basically I think everyone's on mountain bikes for that one as well,
yeah, pretty much.
if I'm
Yeah,
not mistaken. And even Little Sugar
yeah,
actually
exactly. So
is a
it is, I would say, like on paper, yes, the Lifetime Grand Prix has three mountain bike races in it. But I mean, in terms of like, I really only consider there to be kind of one um, race that kind of requires a really strong mountain bike skill set, where you can gain a major advantage as a mountain biker, and that's Little Sugar. And it was really cool for that to be part of the series for the first time last year. And definitely that was part of like definitely helped me finish finish where I did in the overall because I that was my best race of the season. Um, but yeah, it would be
single track. It looks
yeah,
a
exactly.
lot.
Lots of
Yeah.
lots of single track. I guess it is pretty nuanced, but like I think for a race like Leadville, having a mountain bike background does help you kind of not make mistakes or ride more smoothly or maybe able to push equipment decisions a little more aggressively in the sense that, hey, maybe a mountain biker with good skills can run a slightly faster tire because they can kind of manage that. But in terms of like gaining an advantage because of technical mountain bike skills, uh, there's at the level that I'm racing at, there's everyone's good enough basically to manage that course, and same for Schwalmingen, in that you can gain an advantage with good skills, good smoothness, good efficiency.
That's pretty cool to hear. Yeah, because I think from like the amateur side, when you look at just the descents on Leadville and all you passing riders that are coming up potentially,
Hmm.
yeah, it looks very technical at the speeds that you folks are going at and you're going at. But it's interesting. That's really insightful to hear that. Yeah, that is not really that technical to a true mountain bike pro, obviously compared to like Little
Yeah.
Sugar. That makes
Yeah, and I
sense.
think it's like a nuanced topic. I think these I'm not some mountain bike elitist that is going to say that these races aren't real mountain bike races, because um like these races are great because they're perhaps a lot more approachable or accessible to, in terms of like technical skill or ability, to a lot more people that might not have as much single track experience. So that's really cool that a lot more people can show up and do this race and complete it and that kind of thing. But in terms of like the pointy end of things, what really makes a difference for gaining an advantage over all these other amazing athletes that I'm racing against? I mean, Little Sugar is kind of the one where, okay, you need to have done your homework or really have that mountain bike background to perform well.
That's really stellar. Um, you did the talking about the stage races because it's kind of interesting. There are a few kind of themes that may be emerging in the field is trying to the field of gravel of cycling or off-road North American cycling, and also not purely North America, appears to be evolving to potentially have stage races. You had some amazing experience with that. Would love to hear more about your time at Cape Epic and also the gravel burn, and maybe if you have heard kind of if there is that supposition is true that there is potentially going to be more stage races in these off-road. But we could start with maybe Cape Epic and your experience at Gravel Burn. Gravel Burn looked really amazing as well, and kind of what
Yeah.
you think that could mean for the landscape evolving into the future.
Yeah. Yeah, getting to do another Cape Epic this year. This was my second. Um, I got to race this year with Lachlan Morton, which was just a very cool experience, and kind of yeah, special to get to know him and race alongside him for I guess we were on the ground for about a couple weeks in South Africa. So that was really cool. Yeah, Cape Epic is just, it's a really cool race. It suits me super well, and it's a really nice combination of, technical mountain bike racing, group racing, tactics, kind of there's a lot, just the nature of the race. There is um kind of road-esque stuff that comes in with group racing, pacing, and then all bundled within a stage race, which just makes it extremely like interesting to compete in, and how you apply your energy throughout the 8 days. It's just like to me, it's a really interesting, engaging way to race my bike. And yeah, stage racing is definitely my favorite. Um, and mountain bike stage racing is, uh, yeah, I guess the pinnacle of that for me. Um, and Cape Epic's the biggest one in the world. So yeah, super amazing to get to race that. Again, I learned a lot. I learned a lot at the first time I did it. I learned a lot this year. And yeah, looking forward to hopefully going back with um, finding a good matchup for a partner, and seeing what I can do there. It seems like a long time ago now, but
Yeah,
um, yeah, it's such a cool race, and I do also think it kind of plays a big part in like laying the foundation for the season.
that's right. Same thing for Gravel Burn, I guess, right? The kind of interesting stage and kind of anatomy of that race, and very different climate, obviously, as well. That should be probably said. Do you find the endurance like the it's is the mindset, do you think, is the same or different? in addition to all the nuances of the tactics and the terrain, do you find the mindset different between the just a very long, like a 200 miler versus
Mm.
the stage races and how you pace yourself?
Yeah, I think, I guess one of the cool things about the stage racing and the long races is that you have time to go through ups and downs out there. I think within a stage race, everyone has one bad day or several bad moments, but you can recover from those, and the same goes for a long gravel race. So it is really interesting that way, like how an individual manages that, bounces back, and from a mental perspective, I think that's pretty interesting. Um, Also, I think, yeah, it's just it's like a different skill set doing um, stage racing and long gravel races, or not skill set, but kind of physiological quality, where in some ways it's about how you get the least worse, or like how you degrade the least throughout the week. Um, winning doing good in a gravel race is how well you can perform 5 hours in. And same with a stage race. It's being really good on the fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth day. Um, so yeah, it's just different. It's like some different qualities, physiological qualities, and I feel like I have those. So it's nice to get to kind of use those in those racing scenarios.
From a tactics perspective, do you feel there's less push to do like a breakaway as we've been seeing in the long gravel races? Both from a strategy perspective, there appears to be some breakaway, mentality, which with the environment would have helped in this case. There's no, as you said, no mud splash, for example, if you're in the front. But with a stage race, I presume that would be maybe potentially lighting a lot more matches earlier, and then it doesn't kind of work out as these very tough stages continue.
I mean, you'd think there would be a lot of pacing involved in some of these stage racing, but
Hmm.
it races very full gas, and there's a little bit of calculus there, looking at GC and how you apply your energy throughout the race. But it's also pretty flat out racing most of the time.
Okay, there you
Yeah.
go. You answered my
Uh,
question.
and I
So it seems
think,
to be full gas.
yeah, and I think it's also, I mean, Cape Epic's really interesting in that it's a pairs race, and that brings in a whole nother dynamic, that you need to figure out how best to work with your partner to do the best you can, and that's another super interesting part that I didn't mention before.
Did you had some planning time before that with Lachlan? It sounds like a couple of weeks maybe leading
Yeah,
into it,
about a
or
week.
yeah,
Yeah, we
a
were on
week.
the ground in Stellenbosch about a week before the race. Um, yeah, we both, honestly, being an early part of the season, we both prepared really well for this, but you never really know how things are going to go until you get to the start line, and give it a go. We started super well, I think. Yeah, our best ride of the week was the prologue, which was a 45-minute effort, and we finished ninth, um, which was really surprising to me, just given Lachlan's background. This is the guy that rode across Australia doing ridiculous, spending 12 to 15 hours a day on the bike for a month. So it's pretty incredible that we managed to do what we did in the 45-minute time trial on the first day. I was not expecting that. And I guess that speaks to Lachlan's talent as an athlete and that range that he has. Um, but yeah, throughout the race, we figured out how best to work with one another, and I think by the last three stages, we really cracked it, and we were riding super well. And we kind of, yeah, steadily moving up the GC throughout the race.
That's awesome. You look like you folks have you both have similar nuances, or you have a similar nuanced approach to cycling, but also you probably complement each other. He seems just from the interviews uh, kind of goes with the flow and a bit more, and kind of has an artistic side to it, which probably complements both your nuanced approach, but also you bring different technical aspects together, and it really would seem to have worked out.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think Lachlan definitely has he has both a laid back approach and is very, very dialed. I mean, I don't think how um, his focus on preparation and training and stuff doesn't really, it might not be the main part of his story that gets shown publicly, but it's definitely there. And then when he's going after a goal, um, yeah, he's super focused and super dialed, and his like talents really show, you know.
That's so cool to hear. The next part I was going to ask you about was, and we can discuss it, is with the stage races being kind of one thing. The next thing that's emerging is the concept of, and I think probably you would say, or you may say that they have both advantages and disadvantages relative to each other. But the concept of teams, which kind of emerges from potentially kind of a more classical kind of cycling background and what's about to occur in the Tour de France in now off-road cycling, kind of what's because there are a lot of folks that are in teams, I guess now, and there are some folks that, but a lot more folks are still privateers, and kind of what the discussion on the ground is. Maybe even not specific to you. Kind of what's the vibe among the community in the pro men's field as far as what they feel about this. What are the considerations moving forward?
Yeah, I think first off, there needs to be a distinction between riders that wear the same kit or share a few sponsors versus a team. In my mind, there's only really a couple teams out there operating, you know, as a team in this off-road gravel space. You know, the Specialized team, Canyon team seems to be racing as a team and operating as a team. There's a few others that there's a few others as well. So um, yeah, I mean, I do think teams are coming. I think it's kind of a logical evolution of this as things become more organized and the sport matures a little bit. Um, it is like I don't think we've yet seen, um, perhaps Specialized isn't a great example of a team because they're a team, but they also just have some of three of the best, three, four, five of the best riders within the races. So how much is a team, how much is having an additional rider out there racing with you? How much is that impacting things? Obviously, at Unbound, we saw like a very direct impact with like a wheel swap between Mads and Keegan. But I think it will be really interesting to see how, let's say, several sort of domestique level riders might support a single leader within a gravel race and how that would work. Um, the reality of a gravel race that differentiates it from road racing is that sometimes, depending on the surface, the drafting effect isn't as much. So, if you're going to make it to a point in a gravel race where you can have an impact on helping a teammate or an impact on a final result for a teammate, you also have to be one of the best to just make it to that point, make it to all the selections, make it over all the rough terrain, not make mistakes and have mechanicals, these sorts of things. So it is like a really tricky. It it's a tricky thing. I don't really know where it's going to go, but I do think teams are going to try, and I do think it will be a matter of like scale. If someone can bring 8 riders to a race, okay, maybe that's going to make a massive difference. But with teams of 2 and 3, those riders still need to be some of the best riders in the race for those team tactics to be effective um, in determining the final result of the race, basically, or the performance.
That's cool to mention, yeah, because as you're saying, it's just very different. I mean, both as an amateur, but just I think it's just so different off-road racing compared to on-road. There's just so many technical factors and nuances, and the terrain makes a huge difference.
Totally.
And there's so many factors that come into play at different times that don't align as well with a kind of as you said, the domestique kind of approach in road cycling. It just looks, which is cool actually. It allows different opportunities and
Yes, for sure.
different ways of wins and to come
Yeah.
about, wins and fails actually.
Yeah, it
Um,
does make it very
so,
dynamic, and it is, like you said, very terrain or course specific.
mhm.
Um, that is one thing that's really cool about gravel racing is that there is no single way, or like it's so variable on where the race is happening and the format that the organizer decided on. Think about a BWR versus a steamboat gravel. Just very different types of races, different skill sets. One might be more or less conducive to kind of teams having a bigger or smaller impact in them.
It's going to be very interesting. The regulatory part is going to be very interesting as well, because I'll allude to this part, I guess, and you can comment potentially is that there is the on course dynamics and advantages or disadvantages potentially, but there's the off road stuff. For example, having a whole team look after the bike and clean it, and
Totally.
what the feed zone looks like, and things like that. And some of those, I think, you sometimes find natural partners you work with in a race as you kind of see, but that doesn't translate to the support that's there in the feed zone or the technical aspect of having the bike completely looked after. And you just go to sleep.
Yeah,
Not worry
for
about that. So,
100%. Yeah, like throughout my career, I've been on more factory teams, Norco factory team, Max's factory racing, where yeah, a little bit more of the whole setup is taken care of you versus taken care of for you versus kind of the privateer model where I'm like, for example, this season, I'm generally the mechanic for Haley and I, both at home building bikes and on the road. So yeah, it changes things, but it's also like really interesting and it's kind of a fun way to do things. Our sport, this off-road cycling thing's in flux right now. It's always changing, it's growing. I think there's a lot of potential as the racing is really interesting and dynamic. If you think about in professional road cycling, you think about some of the most exciting races of the year, your mind likely goes to some of the classics, um, where the script isn't necessarily kind of written before the race goes, and depending on weather, mistakes, course conditions, all these things, things can change. So I think gravel has a lot of um, yeah, the parts that make the classics races so interesting. So I think it's kind of on the major players in in this space, like the race organizers, the athletes, um, sponsors, brands, to figure out how to, share this widely and make it, yeah, make it interesting to like a wider audience and hopefully get more people out on their bike and have more people engaged.
That's right. I think that's a fantastic segue to talk about some of those awesome sponsors, but also how you as a professional make those choices amongst the products that you're using because it's so cool. That's kind of one of the biggest things is for the not only in your professional world, but obviously the bigger mantra is to get people excited about cycling, to get excited about the gear and be able to tinker in everyone's different levels of capability to be able to enjoy the sport and also to handle safely a particular course, but also to deal with mechanical things on the road, especially as the courses are getting longer and longer, which is really cool. So I was gonna say, so we'll call this segment, Gear Talk with the Pro. Maybe we can start with, one of the biggest topics in the gravel cycling is always tire choice, and one of your key sponsors is Maxxis, and they make a bunch of things, but one of the things they're famous for is tires, and um, I don't know if you were able to walk the audience to kind of through your choices of tires for the various courses and also within the course based on some weather changes that you think about, maybe both on the gravel side and on the fast mountain bike side, kind of choices that you are your go-to trusted choices within that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm super lucky to have Maxis as a sponsor. I've been basically since I started doing this longer endurance stuff. So the last 5 years, I've been racing their tires. I really enjoy working with the people at the brand, uh, and the products very, very good. I do feel generally when I'm lining up to a race, I have an advantage with my tires in terms of speed, durability, grip, um, yeah, puncture resistance, and kind of choice for the different races I'm doing. I think it's a we're in an interesting time with again like all things gravel related. There's just been a lot of effort in the industry put towards refining these products. Um, and one of the things that we're looking at, or that people are getting, um, paying a lot of attention to, is rolling resistance. And I think, obviously, very important, especially over like a long, rough gravel race. It can make a huge difference. Um, but it's also interesting seeing how sometimes, um, when maybe people are making decisions based on just rolling resistance, they make a mistake on tire choice because it doesn't necessarily have the right durability for the course, or maybe not the right grip um, for the course. So, yeah, generally with Maxxis tires, I feel like it's a really good balance across all the things that matter. Um, Maxxis tires like test, um, they're certainly not the fastest out there. They're continually getting better, but they're not the fastest. But overall, they're such a great tire in all the uh, categories that matter for performance on the day for an entire race. Um, and yeah, another thing that Maxxis does really well is just making sure that we're equipped with um, tires for specific events. So, like for example, at Unbound, I had a 50 millimeter version of the Reaver, but with additional protection to deal with the risk of punctures for the like the Flint rocks in Kansas. And this is technology that's like we're testing, and then will hopefully be available to consumers in the future, similar to how they kind of launched Team Spec tires to the people, which is like a cool thing that they've done in the last couple of years. But yeah, working with Maxxis is awesome. Really great product. And it's also, I'm just so very familiar with the product that I'm really confident in my tire choice each time I make it. for the specific race, and that goes a long way, especially as a privateer. Just not having to waffle so much um, on tire choice.
That's awesome that they're doing some cool experimentation on the casings, I guess, and the balance
Yeah,
of grip. Is your go-to tire on the Maxxis side for your dry gravel that has loose components? Would it be the Reaver, for example?
yeah. For the most part, I'm reaching for the Reaver or the Aspen ST, depending on what kind of volume I want. Basically, the Reaver. Not sure it's available yet to consumers, but that'll top out at 50 millimeters. And then the ST will go, but it'll be 55 and then basically 50 or like I guess 60, which is a 2.25 kind of mountain bike size tire. So between those, I have a pretty good range of a tire that's a fast rolling center, good shoulder knob in a wide range of volumes, depending on
Hmm.
what bike I'm putting it on. And yeah,
Have you started to mix and match on your gravel 3T bike? And that's one of your other sponsors, an amazing company. Do you tell the audience kind of which 3T is the bike that you're using, and do you ever mix and match kind of wider in the front and and also tread pattern front versus back, and just kind of curious about your approach.
yeah.
Maybe a couple of conditions, muddy versus kind of dry, faster gravel.
To be honest, I'm basically because I have that mountain bike background, I'm able to handle a very like minimal tread tire in a wide range of conditions. So I'm mostly reaching for a very fast rolling, pretty minimal center knob um, tire. For in terms of bikes from 3T, I have three different gravel bike options. So one that's sort of the raciest, if you will, with tire clearance that maxes out at 50. And then I have two others, the Extrema and then the Ultra 2. And they're very similar bikes. They both have clearance for 2.25 tires. Um, but then the Ultra 2 is suspension corrected. So I can put a suspension fork on that one. So I really have a very big range of tires, or sorry, of gravel bikes to choose for different races. Um, and yeah, the for example, the Rift, my plan is to use a suspension fork at the Rift, just given the terrain. And I haven't been there before, but from the research I've done, it could be a good decision.
Yeah, it's supposed to be very gnarly actually, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
probably one of the most extreme terrains.
yeah,
Hopefully not weather, but just terrain.
yeah,
That's actually quite a clearance on that gravel bike, 2.25.
yeah,
That's probably industry leading actually with 3T there, because 2.1 is the new kind of
yeah,
limit on a lot of these bikes. And you would be able to do that. You would probably size down a little bit, but you'd still have good amount of mud clearance if you were uh, to do that on that
yeah.
bike.
Yeah. So for 3T designs, I mean, 3T is a bit of well, definitely a strong innovator in this space. If you followed them any time back, you'll see that, yeah, they were the first with this radical idea of an aero gravel bike, which is
That's right.
now basically common, very common
Hmm.
now. They're also the Extrema, I think the Extrema platform, which is my rigid sort of big tire clearance gravel bike, is about 4 years old. So I mean, just think about that in the rapid acceleration of this gravel space. They were definitely
Hmm.
first movers on this. And yeah, definitely one of the main reasons why I chose to work with 3T is is that I felt like for a race like Unbound, Big Sugar, some of the BWRs, that having that tire clearance was super important for just competing in the race. Um, but yeah, 3T alongside big tire clearance is also very aero focused. So the tires are designed to be very streamlined with the frame. So it's not the biggest tire clearance in terms of height, kind of from the top of the tire to the top of the fork, for example, or to the seat tube. So everything's tucked in quite tight in a very aero package, with which 98% of the time is the way you want it. But there is those periods where there's mud where I do size
Yeah.
down in tires to give myself that extra space. Um, yeah, and then yeah, it's always also fun, like on all these bikes, just playing around with the different drivetrain configurations that I have with my sponsorship from with support from Shimano. Like on some bikes, I'm running basically a full Dura-Ace one by setup with an XTR rear derailleur, playing with the different cassette options I have and derailleur options I have. Um, just kind of tinkering and kind of optimizing for different race scenarios, which is, yeah, super fun to do.
Yeah, we should definitely talk about the Shimano components because they are excellent, actually, and I'm so glad they're a sponsor for you. So it sounds like you've gone with the rear derailleur, the mountain bike, the XTR. From my knowledge, is very similar to the GRX. In fact, potentially a bit lighter, maybe even more premium components in the
Exactly.
XTR.
Yeah, I mean, the that is one cool thing about Shimano is that a lot of I mean, all the products are compatible. So like uh 12 speed, 12 speed road or mountain, there's a lot of cross compatibility there. Um, so yeah, we're running the mountain bike derailleur paired with Dura shifters. It might sound radical, but it all works. It's designed to work together, which is cool. Um, I on Yeah, on my racy gravel bike, I'm running Dura-Ace kind of shift brake levers. Just for mostly for just the weight savings that the Dura-Ace caliper and shift brake levers give me. And I do really like the brake feel. And then on other bikes that are potentially going to be raced on more rowdy terrain, like on my Extrema or Ultra 2, I'm running the GRX hoods. And they're just a little more substantial. They have a little more grip on them. Um, and the the braking from the hood, I feel, is just a better shape or like a better feel for my hand. Um, that is to say, just like it's kind of cool that you can kind of choose your components based on a lot of personal preference, and it all kind of plays nice together.
Yeah, that is actually really good for the audience to hear that Dura-Ace in the front and Dura-Ace shifters and similarly Ultegra could be used,
Yeah, exactly.
even 105s,
Yeah,
and they'll pair very nicely with a rear XTR derailleur with presumably the 1051
yeah,
cassette
exactly.
on that setup. Yeah, which is really fantastic. Are the calipers just the nerding out for a moment here? Do you change your calipers in that setting? Like the if you do GRX in the front, your calipers are GRX and um,
We
or do you switch
we
that out?
we actually have the option to do GRX hoods paired with Dura-Ace calipers if we want. I haven't done that yet, just based on what I chose to build up my bikes with.
Hmm.
But yeah, perhaps in the future. I have paired GRX shift brake levers with XTR calipers, which I'm not sure you're supposed to do. But that was a necessity for a drop bar mountain bike for Leadville last year, which it wasn't. I don't think it was as good as if I used GRX calipers, but it worked.
Yeah, I think that'll be interesting to note that you said there's no issue with because the mechanics of it presumably has to do with the volume of hydraulic fluid that's moving through the pistons and
Exactly.
then and
Yeah.
there's a cross compatibility. But there appears to be, as you said, certainly on the GRX slash Durace side,
Yeah.
which is quite cool.
And I guess another thing you have to be aware of is with the new XTR hydraulic systems using the low viscosity fluid, it's a different fluid between the road stuff and the mountain bike stuff. I don't know what the plan is for Shimano, if everything's going to go to that low viscosity fluid or not, but that is just one thing to note. Yeah, to be aware of right now.
I'll make two personal plugs for Shimano just because targeting a wide audience of people that look at different components. One is I guess that it's easier to work with mechanically because the mineral oil is less toxic to work
Mm,
with compared to dot fluid. Again, nothing wrong with dot fluid, but just something to think about. And GRX does have I've discovered on kind of bikes that if you want to not get the top end stuff, again, kind of being budget kind of focused, there is a 700 series GRX
mm,
shifters and Di2 that will pair completely with XTR. So you could go with a very like top of the line rear derailleur, and you have lots of options up front, including Di2 105, Di2 700 series GRX, or the full 800 series GRX up all the way up to Durace.
yeah,
So
totally.
the cross compatibility. Are you this you may have information or you may not be able to disclose? Is there any interesting news coming on the crank front from Shimano? Potentially other materials, if you have any knowledge. We're just trying to
I
break some
really,
news here.
if I'm honest, I have zero knowledge. So
Okay.
yeah, we'll see we'll see what they go on do with that. I guess
Yeah.
one thing with Shimano is, if when they release a product, they don't release anything without taking their time to do
Yes.
things absolutely perfectly. So whenever Shimano does release something, it's going to be very good. And we waited a long time for this XTR Di2. I don't think um, it's not in bad taste for me to say this. The old mechanical XTR was very, very good, but it was due for an upgrade, and we waited a long time. But we waited, and you know, it's so good. It was definitely worth the wait.
Yeah, and to say that it works, they just went a different philosophy that you could still put a UDH hanger and connect to it, and it could, the philosophy is that it could still take a beating, and in fact has a, I think it has a mode that it goes into if it has a strike, and you have to
Yeah,
kind of reset it, which is quite cool.
I actually experienced this on a ride recently. I was doing definitely some under biking on some trails in Victoria, BC, and probably a short stick, probably an inch in diameter, somehow made its way in between the top of the derailleur and the cassette, got fully stuck, but the derailleur moved out of the way. Um, the the derailleur hanger didn't get bent. I was able to, with a lot of force, pull this stick out and then run it through the gears, and everything was perfect. So that was my first knowing experience of that sort of crash. Um, I don't know what Shimano calls it actually, but like the crash release function or something like that, where it disengages the derailleur from the motor so it can freely
Hmm.
move with whatever has hit it. Um, that was my first experience of knowingly, uh, that happening with my rear derailleur, and it worked amazing. And I was pretty far out there, so I was just really grateful that that product held up in that scenario because I did not want to walk home.
Yeah, it's a solid derailleur, and the
Yeah.
1051 gives you such an amazing range when you pair it with an appropriate for the rider's ability
Yeah.
front chainring size.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Actually, for BWR, which you did really good at, you're just there, right next to I think the Russell, the front there. Do you remember? Do you recall your front chainring size?
I think I think I might have been running a 46. I might have been running a 46 tooth with actually a 945 cassette. I'd have to look back at what I did for that specifically. But yeah, I play around uh, with that. If the climbs are not too long, I can feel like I can get away with slightly less than a 1-to-1, then I will do that just because the gear ranges are a little tighter. It's nicer on the flat stuff. But yeah, I'd have to look back at my bike check or my photos from that race to figure out. There's so many races with so many different setups. I don't always remember.
As a privateer, that is one potentially a very good part is, you know every component of the bike. You've put it there, for that moment you're going on something completely gnarly. You have complete trust that every screw is to spec.
Yeah,
At
yeah,
least you kind of there is that part because there are people that experience mechanical failures that you look at, you like, how did that happen? And it's like, well, something
totally.
was loose, someone didn't catch it. Um,
Yeah,
so
honestly, that scenario, well, similar to what you're talking about here, that situation or the fact that I am a privateer plays into um my decisions of what sponsors to work with. Like I don't have the bandwidth or time to be having to deal with a finicky product the night before doing a race when I'm working on my bike by myself. So I choose to work with partners that have a really high performing, reliable product. And Shimano is one of them, Maxxis is one of them, Fox, Easton, RaceFace, all really reliable products. I don't have I don't have a mechanic working for me that can deal with a finicky product the night before the race. So it's that's a huge part of some of my decisions.
that's stellar. Do you want to walk the audience through any other aspects of the gear? So we talked about PearlIzumi, kind of, because the kit also makes a huge difference. Comfort, durability,
Yeah,
dealing with the weather, and then maybe other partners you want to mention, nutrition-wise, or other wheels potentially. I'm just kind of
yeah,
interested in.
yeah. I mean, to start off, yeah, PearlIzumi is I've been working with them for a few years now. Um, really obviously like a legacy brand. They've been around for a long time. And it's really interesting to see them with really pushing in this clothing space right now with the release of the new black line of clothing, which is really good. Um, One of the things I like about Pearl is, again, this is a theme here, but the people that I get to work with there, solid people. And then their winter, speaking of, we're in Canada, all weather winter, or kind of all weather riding clothing. Their line of clothing for spring, fall, winter is really good. Um, so yeah, happy to have good access to that. Uh, yeah, some of the other sponsors, wheels, running RaceFace and Easton wheels. Again, a really solid product. Um, they're kind of similar to Shimano in that they don't release anything unless it's really good. Um, so yeah, really happy with the EC90 ALX wheels. I race on the gravel bike there. Um, and then Fox suspension it's just reliable, um, really high performing suspension for the mountain bike racing. Um, and then yeah, a couple new ones this year were Rex bike wax,
Right.
yeah, kind of chain wax and lubes, and then stands for tire sealant. I've been using stands since the very beginning. Um, it's a product I really trust, and it's a brand that's also innovating to try to, like, they're trying to keep getting better despite being, the first mover on tubeless and the whole system. So
Hmm.
that's really cool to see. And then yeah, Rex is a really interesting one because they have just a massive heritage within like the ski wax game. It's a Finnish company. Um, Basically, Rex wax in Finland it's available at the grocery store. or
Oh
their
wow.
equivalent of Walmart over there. There'll be just a huge rec section. Um, and they're kind of pushing into North America a little bit more. They actually just released a pretty cool wax like hot pot for just melting wax to wax your chain. Uh, but again, yeah, Chris, the guy that I work with there is awesome. Um, he's actually until this year he was a ski wax tech for the U.S. Olympic or for the
Oh
like
wow.
U.S. World Cup XC ski team. So obviously a guy that just understands performance, and it's really cool to work alongside him. Um, and at the races, actually, we I get to work with him, just prepping my bike, prepping my chains for the event, which is awesome. And as a privateer, just makes a huge difference. Those little things that I don't need to worry about traveling to a race with three, pre-waxed chains. I can rely
Yeah.
on at the big races, Chris to kind of take care of me there.
That's amazing. Are there any the wax products that you want to highlight? Because I recently discovered the brand, and I'll put a link in the description. And I think you have a code for that, which is pretty cool. Just again, was not part of this discussion, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
definitely saw it on Instagram. But yeah, I've actually ordered one myself because the
Oh,
setup,
awesome.
the waxing system looks really good. The pot looks, again, there are other vendors out there. Again, they're all amazing, but this particular brand of Rex, the pot, just the anatomy, the width of the
Mm,
of the kind of the container looks really well designed as far as being able to accept the chain and potentially even
yeah,
maybe sneak in two chains if you're really strapped for time.
yeah,
And I really like the mode where you have to increase the temperature because that's not intuitive. That when you have a puck and you got 30 minutes, you got to wax a chain. You're going for a ride. You got
yeah,
to increase it to a higher temperature. About I don't know what you go to 120 probably
yeah,
maybe
exactly.
125. Get it melted and then go back to the 75 range. But maybe just talk about the wax components because I think as they're going in, as you said, from ski into bicycles. There's probably a bit of optimization there as far as what products in their wax do they have, and
Yeah,
for conditions, durability, like a long race versus a 30-kilometer fast race or something like that. What would people do?
yeah. They sell their wax in um, I forget how many bricks come in a package, but it's maybe 12
Six or
bricks.
eight or something, or maybe more. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's um, kind of a additive and then the base wax, and then you adjust the ratio of the additive to the base wax based on if you want the fastest possible chain versus the most durable, and you just adjust that ratio. All the information's kind of on their website. But yeah, it does give some um, yeah, flexibility there. And then they also just released the transformer block, which is an additional additive that allows you to put in like a factory grease chain without doing anything to it. And then it coming out fully waxed. So that transformer block is great for your first wax. And then typically at home, what I do or on my setup, I have this is this is something I learned from Chris, but I just have a kettle, like a hot water kettle, and when I'm re-waxing a chain, that's how I clean it. Um, so if it's just that kind of gets all the dirt and kind of stuck on dirty wax off. So I kind of pour hot water over the chain, let it sit for a minute, it heats up, and then I wipe it with a rag. And again, I can just avoid using like a heavy solvent. Um, so that keeps everything like very clean. That being said, if for some reason like you have to use an oil-based lube on your chain or you're in a pinch, Rex has this chain cleaner that works super well. So I use that in some scenarios as well.
That's actually good to hear. That's probably best practice because a lot of us, including myself, will just take a dirty chain and sometimes re-wax it. But yeah, you should probably really put it into hot water and
Yeah, yeah,
clean
the
it up. It probably makes a huge difference.
hot water setup works really well. Typically, I just have a rag in each hand so you're not getting burned by the chain, and then you can
Right.
kind of just uh, clean it kind of up and down, and then it's surprising what that hot water can do. Your chain looks brand new, um, ready to go afterwards. And another step that I do just to make sure I'm like using, not wasting chains, basically is just once I clean it, I just do a I have a chain checker just to measure the length, to just make sure I'm um, not putting a super worn chain back on, or that I'm not retiring a chain before it still has some life left in it.
Those are good tips. I was gonna say the Shimano XTR is also very forgiving because of just the amount of clutch it has built in. Like there is no clutch mechanism. Like it's not a switch like the
Yeah.
mechanical GRX, but it's just such a strong tension on the chain. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, we talked about a whole bunch of things. So this maybe brings us to our closing, bringing it all together. Not only the love of cycling, your expertise, but also the gear. I will ask if you had to pick one bike, what that bike would be, and kind of what modality, and kind of what you would how you'd set it up.
Mm. It's so tricky.
Very difficult.
Very difficult. I think for one, it depends really on where you are, to figure out, okay, what's the one bike for this spot? I was actually having this conversation with a friend when we were out riding in Victoria recently. And my thought for there was, I think if you're not going up island to ride mountain bikes, having a gravel bike for just general riding in the area is the bike. A gravel bike with a suspension fork, because you can go on the roads, you can move quickly on the roads, you can go on the gravel, the paths, and then you can hit the light single track and have a lot of fun on it. Um, it's so hard for me as as a mountain biker to just think about the prospect of not having a mountain bike. But I'll just leave it as you. It's so dependent on where you're living, and that is a really cool thing about current gravel bike offerings, is that a gravel bike can be almost a road bike with 40C slicks that works on the terrain that you ride around. Like for the townships, basically an all-road bike or a light gravel bike with 40C slicks, that's pretty great for moving around that terrain. But you can also go to the other end of the spectrum where if you lived in Squamish, and you wanted to uh, ride on some of the logging roads and light single track, a gravel bike with suspension and two tires, that would be the way to go. So I think, yeah, consumers are really lucky right now that they have choice to basically, yeah, have an off-road drop bar bike that suits what they want to do with it, and potentially also that can be shifted based on where you're riding.
That's a very, very balanced and nuanced answer as expected from yourself. So that's
Yeah.
fantastic. So somewhere in there was I'm not going to give up my mountain bike,
Yes.
but a
Yeah.
gravel bike with suspension will probably do everything.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the Gravel Route. We really wish you the best at the Rift and all the other Lifetime Grand Prix events and all the other events you're doing, and your continued success, and to elevate, as you've already done, continuing to elevate the sport in Canada, and Canada kind of across the field. And I know you're highly respected amongst your peers. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot, Mike. I appreciate the time.